Yeah, I've got about 50 points, but I kind of can defend everybody on this. I was kind of involved in a lot of these discussions for the last 10 years. And to address the first question, there was a study done about 6 years ago, a rooftop study that showed within a mile or two, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, the highest concentrated of income from the rooftops from Highland Square. This project, and from what I always, talked with, with Joe or with his dad or with the mayor or with anybody else, that it was never going to fit into that cookie cutter model of, you plug in the square footage, you plug in the rent, and this is what's going to work. The city's investment so far in Highland Square has literally been in the millions of dollars. And Adele, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you're kind of right in your point. I don't mean to be a politician about all this, but I think the time has come for Highland Square. I mean, all these projects wait in priority, and that's what you kind of have to do when you're in government. You got to make decisions, and you make people mad. But this particular point, I think, and I can, Raymond's got a good point. It's not always sports, and sometimes those projects would be developed, like, say, 8 years ago, and then they come up the line and then they go. I think it's time for this. I mean, this was something that I really wanted to get completed before everything was done, but it really takes, I think, a little bit more, not even a little bit more, but some sort of idea or vision. When they did the original study, Mark, they went up, and wanted to do a little more density, which I think makes a little bit more sense. A grocery store on a smaller scale, you don't need 8 toothpastes, 9 loaves of bread. I don't, and I understand that's the model that I think the typical grocery store looks at, because when you look at 40 or 50,000 square feet, you've got all that shelf space. You've got to think small, because that's what's going to fit. And I don't think people need a selection of 6 toothpaste and 8 breads. It's the smaller selection, but you can still encompass everything by going up a little higher. And whether you do something with parking, how big is the building, the new one that's unoccupied?
A little over 3,000.
I mean, and then you have 6,400 right next door.
Yes.
I mean, there's your solution right there. I mean, you cut a couple of doors, you're looking at 9,400 square feet right there. I know it's simple, and I know I'm breaking it down to that, but there is space to do a little bit bigger than 6,400. Get your parking, but it's just going up a little bit. I think anything less than the grocery store, it kind of falls a little bit short. I mean, that's my opinion, and I don't live in this area, but I do come here when I can. But like I said, it falls a little bit short of what was the original intention, and I think anything less.
Well,
it's just not.
I think all those ideas are creative potential solutions, but the issue is finding someone willing to come in and operate a grocery store.
But it's also, and I agree, but it also takes a little bit more. It also takes a little bit different of a thinking from an operator standpoint, and from the city and from Albrecht to say, what, we're not going to get our standard X amount of dollars. I understand people are in for a profit, and that's all well and good. People can make $1 billion because they're going to spend it, and that's okay. But it also takes a little bit give on both sides, and I think from our particular end, at least in the part that I was involved with, we made a significant commitment with keeping the library here, trying to move the buildings up to the front, and all of the things that kind of fit to what Highland Square wanted to look like. It's just getting that last piece of the puzzle. It may take a little bit more of a give on both sides, from maybe money or from development standpoint and from the community standpoint, to say, what, we're almost there. We've got 90% of what we want. We don't have the bakery. Okay, we at least have this. And that's where, it just takes a little bit more give on that side. So, I mean, to me, that's my opinion. It's a short version. I apologize if I took too much time. But
we've done everything that we felt has been commercially reasonable in order to attract a grocery operator. And you get to a certain point where you just can't materialize one out of thin air. And I know everybody always says, well, you guys own and operate the Acme grocery chain. There's your grocery store right there. It was never the intent of Acme, and it's a different business model, for Acme to go into a 6,400 square foot plus minus building. But we've looked at that site in a number of different ways, which include demolishing the 3,000 square foot building, partially to incorporate it into a larger 10,000 square foot building. We've looked at and we've tried to relocate First Merit Bank over onto the corner so that we would have more of a rectangular type of store with deeper parking and better truck dock access due to the grades. I mean, we're trying to get as creative as we can on this. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're soliciting community input, and we're trying to get as creative as we can in terms of a co-op or whatever other ideas people have to make this successful. I've been working on this project since late 2004, and a grocery store has always been a part of the vision. And we want a grocery store in Highland Square. That's not the issue. We align with the community directly when it comes to that. The issue is You can't materialize a grocery operator out of thin air. I mean, how do we do that? How do we find somebody that is willing to operate? And we've looked at different formats, different types of items that you'd sell. You mentioned the 8 different types of toothpaste. That, you know, we've definitely taken that into account. You don't need that type of product mix in terms of rent and other operating expenses. You know, we're trying. We want a grocery store, and we're willing to make concessions in that area. And
I'm just giving my 2 cents, Joe. I'm not taking shots. I understand.
Right.
It's just we just need to work a little bit harder. I think.
To answer this question.
Yeah.
Well, and really to add to that comment, I mean, really, if you look at the big picture from a real estate development point of view, a grocery store tenant is really one of the most desirable kind of anchor stores. It brings people in. It brings families moving in that area. It's people always need food. I mean, they're not high profit stores, but they are good for as an anchor tenant of a development. Developers want them. So Albrecht Inc. would like to have a grocer there. That's not the issue. Albrecht Inc. has looked hard for grocers, has talked to many people, has worked with people, has tried to bring different models, different, you know, high-end regular stores. It's just a variety of different approaches, and has yet to find someone that it's really working with. And so it's really, in Albrecht Inc.'s, you know, they want to do it.
At what point do you say, you know what, it's not going to happen, and move on? Is the purpose of these forums also to discuss other possibilities, or is it just about the grocery store? Because, you know, if it's not going to happen, that's not what I want to hear, but if it's not going to happen, then do we move on to a discussion of what is going to happen, and focus our energies there?
Well, I think that's a good question. What do we do, given these financial realities, given the realities of the market? You know, should we keep going at this over and over, or is there something else that could be done? What other parts of Highland Square?
Well, let me ask you this: what benefit would it be to the Albrecht Corporation if you actually got someone who is successful in the co-op business to come in to one of these meetings and say, if you want a co-op and you want to partner with Albrecht, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
I mean, are you all willing to do that?
Well, here's people that have contacted us about being interested in a co-op, and there are, as I understand it, some people who are working together, and maybe the way to do that would be through, I mean, Albrecht Incorporated, I think, would be willing to. We brought information last time. There's a national network of co-ops. It's, you know, there's certainly a lot of information available. Albrecht Incorporated is a developer. They're not an expert in co-ops, and Acme Grocery Company is also not an expert in co-ops. So I don't know who the best person is to give that information. But if there's community interest, I think Albrecht Incorporated would be willing to help in that endeavor, or lead, or somehow try to pull together the resources.